I'm going to discuss about differential forms and integrals. Differential forms provide an approach for solving multivariable calculus which are independent of coordinates. Differential forms and integrals are very much similar. Using differential forms, we can find integrands over surfaces, volumes, even the length of a function, etc. Let us see some examples below. So, any differential form has to exist in some categories. Each differential form belongs to one of the category of K form, where K can be 1, 2, 3, etc. They are called as 1 form, 2 form, 3 form, etc. and so on. Let's see examples for each of these. For example of one form is f of x dx, and when I integrate over this, I get something called as curve integral. An example for two form differential form is f of x comma y comma z into dx dy plus g of x comma y comma z into dy dz plus h of x comma y comma z into dz dx. Integration over this gives something called as surface integral, which actually gives the overall surface covered by the function, and this gives actually the overall length covered by the integral when done from a to b, and this is done over a surface. And for three form, the example is f of x comma y comma z into dx dy dz, and if I apply integral over this along volume, this is called as volume integral. So each of these, this is called curve integral, this is called surface integral, this is called volume integral, this gives a length, this gives area, this gives a volume, and so on. For each form there exists different dimensional K forms. So in each of these forms we find something called as D. D is an operator which applied on K form, which applied on a K form differential form gives K plus 1 form. This is called the D operator, which is in significance of dx, dx square, dx cube, up to so on. So in all these forms till now, we have seen only a basic integral, but we have to generalize it more. So let us take the basic generalization of first form. First form can be variables can have the variables including dx, dx square, dx cube, up to so on, dx power n. So any general one form differential form is take f1 into dx plus f2 into dx square plus f3 into dx cube plus dot plus fk into dx power k. So each f is a function of coordinates. So now let us see another variations of K forms. Suppose that W is a function which depends on x power alpha. So this is a K form. Then we can write dW as sigma I equal to 1 to k dou f by dou xi into dx power I into dx power alpha. Here this is the partial derivative with respect to xi, meaning that all other terms are taken constant. All other terms which are not in terms of xi are taken as constant. So now let us see another more generalization. Suppose f is a function of x power I and y power j, then dou f by dou x power j is equal to sigma I equal to 1 to n dou y power I by dou x power j into dou f by dou y power I. This is another form of this. And now let us look at some random examples of where this is used. The differential forms are mostly applied in tensor calculus, differential geometry, and Stokes theorem, and in Green's theorem. These are all kind of real life applications which are used to calculate the overall integral or overall sum. So differential forms and integrals are mostly connected and are not independent of each other.
The scientist today we are going to discuss about is Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Uh, he's a famous German mathematician and philosopher. He lived from 1646 to 1760. He is also known as last universal genius. His early life involves his mother is a professor of philosophy at Leibniz at Leipzig University. He lost his father at the age of 6. Uh, he denied the correctness and popular Aristotle's logic and started to develop his own ideas. He went to the University of Leibniz at the age of 14. He mainly studied philosophy and mathematics. He graduated with bachelor's degree in 1663. After graduation, he went to Jena and spent summer. He was back in Leipzig to start his studies towards doctorate in law. Unfortunately, his mother died in a few days after his return. His contributions involve uh, his mainly contributions involve pinwheel calculator. He invented Leibniz wheel, which is used in arithmometer. He refined binary number system, which is at the foundation of virtually all digital computers. Uh, he also Leibniz calculus ratioinator, which resembles symbolic logic, can be viewed as a way of making feasible calculations feasible. Leibniz was first to see that system of linear equations could be arranged as an array and now called matrix. He also made discoveries in Boolean algebra and symbolic logic. Uh, he also made contributions in infinitesimal calculus. He also introduced the symbol dot to be used for multiplication. This is the statement given by Leibniz. The only way to rectify our reasonings is to make them as tangible as those of mathematicians so that we can find our error at glance, and when there are disputes among persons we can simply say let us calculate without further ado to see who is right. The present concepts of conjugation, disjunction, negativity, identity, set inclusion, and empty set are introduced by Leibniz. In calculus, he made many contributions to infinitesimal calculus. He also introduced integral sign, which we now use, and differential sign and d. He also he introduced the product rule of differential calculus. All mathematicians, his famous quote is, all mathematicians weren't the most intelligent people on earth. For them, their IQ was more important than their IQ. Here is the product rule of Leibniz. Differential of uv is equal to u plus du into v plus dv minus u into v. So now we are going to discuss about Fermat's last theorem. Fermat is a great mathematician, but he refuses to publish his work. So his son published his work. So that's how the Fermat's last theorem is published. His son found it as a marginal note in his work, but the paper is too small to contain its proof, which actually led to the struggle of many mathematicians over past decades. So now I'm going to tell you about its statement. The original proof is a bit complicated, so I'm going to tell a simple modern new proof. Okay, so now I will tell you the statement of Fermat's last theorem. Let a, b, c be positive integers and n be an integer. The equation a power n plus b power n equal to c power n has no solutions for n greater than 2. This is the statement of Fermat's last theorem. Its original proof has concepts related to elliptic curves and modular forms. They are a bit complex, so I am just going to tell an overview of the original proof, and I will tell you a modern new simple proof. Let us say we proved somehow that a cube plus b cube is not equal to c cube for any positive integers a, b and c, and we are required to prove a power 6 plus b power 6 not equal to c power 6. This can be written as a square whole cube plus b square whole cube not equal to c square whole cube. Observe, this is the same as this above equation. Here a square is a positive integer, b square is a positive integer, c square is a positive integer. So if we prove so here the n, this can be modified as n is a prime number greater than 2. So if we prove that a power n plus b power n equal to c power n has no solutions where n is a prime number greater than 2, we can prove the Fermat's last theorem. This is the overview of the original proof. So now I will tell you the modern new simple proof. We can prove the Fermat's last theorem by contradiction. So let's assume that x, y and z be positive integers and n is a prime number greater than n is a positive integer greater than 2. X power n plus y power n equal to z power n. Take the z to the left hand side. X by z whole power n plus y by z whole power n equal to 1. Here x is less than z and y is less than z, so we can write sin alpha equal to x by z and sin beta equal to y by z, where alpha comma beta lie in 0 comma pi by 2. We will have three cases involved. The case 1 is x square plus y square equal to z square. Here the x, y, z can form a right angle triangle as follows. This is angle alpha and this is angle beta. The statement x by z whole power n plus y by z whole power n equal to 1 can be written as sin power n alpha plus sin power n beta equal to 1. Observe, alpha plus beta is 90 degrees. So sin beta is cos alpha. So we can write sin alpha plus cos power n alpha equal to 1. Here the 1 can be written as sin square alpha plus cos square alpha. Take this both to the left hand side and sin square alpha into sin power n minus 2 alpha minus 1 plus cos square alpha into cos power n minus 2 alpha minus 1 equal to 0. Observe, sin square alpha is positive and cos square alpha is positive. Both of them cannot be 0 since alpha is not equal to 0 and alpha is not equal to pi by 2. So the only alternative is these terms should be zeros. But sin alpha cannot be 1 and cos alpha cannot be 1 since alpha not equal to 0 and alpha not equal to pi by 2. So the only alternative is n should be 2. But we have condition that n is greater than 2. So it's a contradiction. Now case 2. In case 2 we have x square plus y square less than z square. So the original statement x by z whole power n plus y by z whole power n is like this: sin power n alpha plus sin power n beta equal to 1. Now we can also write sin power n plus 2 alpha plus sin power n plus 2 beta equal to 1, since n plus 2 is also a positive integer and n plus 2 is greater than 2. It also satisfies for n plus 2. Now subtract sin square alpha plus sin square beta both sides. Now sin square alpha into sin power n alpha minus 1 plus sin square beta into sin power n beta minus 1 is equal to 1 minus sin square alpha minus sin square beta. We can write this as 1 minus x square plus y square by z square. Observe the RHS part. Here x square plus y square is less than z square. So this lies between 0 and 1. And 1 minus 0 and 1. This is greater than 0. RHS is greater than 0. observe the LHS part. Sin square alpha is greater than 0 and sin square beta is greater than 0. This part sin alpha cannot be 1, so sin power something power n minus 1 is less than 0 and sin power n beta is less than 0. So LHS is less than 0 and RHS is greater than 0. They both cannot be equal, so a contradiction. Now, okay, so now the case 3 is x square plus y square is greater than z square. We take the equation from the previous case, sin square alpha into sin power n alpha minus 1 plus sin square beta into sin power n beta minus 1 equal to 1 minus x square plus y square by z square. Here the LHS is less than 0. Since x square plus y square is greater than z square, this one is greater than 1. So RHS is also less than 0. There is a possibility that these two may be equal. So now let's see the diagram. This is y and this is x. Here the x square, this is the side x square plus y square. X square plus y square is greater than z. So let us say this side is z. Now this is the angle alpha. Now let's say this side is z. Now this is the angle beta. Let this distance be a and this distance be b. This will be y minus a and this will be x minus b. Here a and b are natural numbers. Here a and b are natural numbers. Now z square can be written as, by Pythagoras theorem, x minus b whole square plus y square. Now z square can be x square plus y minus a whole square. Since a and b are natural numbers and x and y are positive integers, by solving the equations we get from this diagram, we can establish relation between x and a and b and y. We get the equations as follows: x equal to minus a square plus b square plus 2ay by 2b, y equal to a square minus b square plus 2by by 2a. Since a and b are natural numbers and x and y are natural numbers, we can establish a general solution like x will be in this form and a will be in this form. We will get the general form like this: x equal to n6 whole power k, y equal to n6 whole power m, n5, a equal to 2n6 whole power m plus 1, b equal to 2n6 whole power 2m plus 1. Here n6, n5, k and m are positive integers. In the sense they belong to natural numbers, but n6 is not equal to 1. Now let's calculate z. Z is equal to root over x square plus y minus a whole square equal to some r belongs to natural number, say. Now substitute the values: n6 whole power 2k plus n6 whole power m, n5 minus 2n6 whole power m plus 1 whole square equal to r square. By solving this, we get n5 equal to root over r minus n6 whole power 2k by n6 whole power m plus 2n6 whole power m plus 1. Actually, for r belongs to natural numbers, we should get n5 should belongs to natural numbers, but from this equation, for r belongs to natural numbers, n5 doesn't belong to natural numbers. So it is contradiction. Since in every possible case we got contradiction for a power x power n plus y power n equal to z power n has a solution for n greater than 2. We can say that so by contradiction x power n plus y power n equal to z power n has no solution for n greater than 2. Hence Fermat's last theorem is proved.
Now let's go to the application part. So coming to the application part, let's learn Leibniz rule. First, I'll state what Leibniz rule is, the informal statement of Leibniz rule, and then the formal statement of Leibniz rule. Then let's prove the informal and formal statement. First, we'll be proving informal statement, then we'll go next to proving the formal statement. Leibniz integration rule states informally that d by dx of integral of y0 y1 f of x comma y dy is equal to integration of y0 y1 of partial derivative of f of x comma y with respect to dou x Leibniz integration rule also formally states differentiation of integration of partial derivative of f with respect to x is equal to integration of with the limits a of t to b of t dou f by dou t into dx plus f of b of t comma t dot b dash of t minus f of a of t comma t dot a dash of t. Next, let us see the proof of informal statement and even formal statement. Now let us prove the informal statement of Leibniz integral rule. That is d by dt of integral of f of t comma x in the limits of a to b dx is equal to integral of a to b dou f by dou t into dx. So take the LHS and now let's look this graphically. Suppose we have a graph for f of x, something like this. So the graph of and also let us assume the graph of t plus delta t x is the above curve. And let us take the graph and the area below f of x in between a and b, and similarly let us take the area below f of t plus delta t comma x under under the limits of a comma b. Now if we take this f of t plus delta t comma x, this can be expressed as f plus dou f by dou t into delta t. We get this from Taylor's theorem, and approximating the Taylor's expansion of f of x, or you can just directly do this by using partial differentiation. Okay, so this d by dt of integral of a to b f of t comma x dx is nothing but the change in the area of f of t comma x when it is changed to some delta t, and that is this area. The change in area can be found out by subtracting the area under f of t plus delta t comma x and f of t comma x. So that can be written like this: LHS is equal to integral of a to b f of dou f by dou t into delta t into dx minus integral of a to b f of dx, where this is the area of this whole graph, whole area under f of t plus delta x, and this is the area under f of t comma x. So, and we need the change of this area with respect to time. So this can be written as integral of a to b f of f dx plus integral a to b dou f by dou t delta t into dx minus integral of a to b f dx by delta t. We can see that these two terms get cancelled, and we can cancel delta t, and finally we get integral of a to b df by dou t into dx. This is the final RHS which we have to prove, and finally we have proved the Leibniz informal statement. This is the proof of Leibniz informal statement. Now let's go and see what is the proof of Leibniz formal statement. Now let us see the proof of Leibniz formal statement. The difference between formal statement and informal statement is the limits here are not constant. In formal statement, the limits in informal statement the limits are constant. In formal statement, the limits are not constant. So similarly in informal proof, this is graph of f of t comma x, and this is graph of f of t plus delta t comma x, and f of t plus delta t comma x can be written like this using Taylor expansion. So here according to this formal statement, we need the difference in the area under above graph f1 and below graph f2. So the area under above graph f1 is, and as the limits of f1 are from a plus dA by dt and delta t and b plus dB by dt delta t, the area under this is I5 plus I6 plus I2 plus I3, and the area under second graph, the below graph f2 is I1 plus I2. Since this graph has the limits from a to b, out of this I2 gets cancelled, and I4 and I6 are negligible. Like they, as this delta here, delta b is approximately 0, and this delta t is also approximately 0, so this area will be 0, so we can neglect I6. So finally we have to find I5 plus I3 minus I1. Now area under above graph f1 can be written as integral of a plus dA by dt delta t into b plus dB by dt delta t f plus df by dt delta x by dx, and area under graph f2, let's name it as AF1 and AF2, is A to B f dx. So we need the difference of these two areas and differentiate it with respect to time. So that is, we require integ a plus dA by dt delta t into b plus dB by dt delta t f plus df by dt delta x dx minus integral a to b f dx by delta t. So let's separate all the terms here, and I can simplify the first term, that is AF1. AF1 can be written as integral of a to b f plus df by dt dx delta x dx minus integral f plus dou f by dou t dou x into delta t integral dx different integral in limits of b to b plus db by dt delta t of f plus dou f by dou t into delta t into dx minus this term. So I'm doing here af minus af2, that is f dx by delta t, that is equal to delta t. So again separating all these terms, like I'll separate f and df by delta t, and here f and df by dx. So we get this as, this is equal to integral a to b f dx plus a to b dou f by dou t dx delta t minus integral a to a plus dA by dt delta t f dx minus integral a to a plus dA by dt delta t dou f by dou t delta t dx plus integral b to b plus dB by dt delta t f dt plus integral b to b plus dB by dt into delta t dou f by dou t into delta t dx minus integral a to b f dx by whole divided by delta t. So here we could see that f dx and f dx are similar, and coming to other terms, here the limit is from a to b, and we could see that we can cancel delta t and delta t, so we get integral a to b dou f by dou t dx minus, now here it is integral from a to a plus dA by dt delta t and of f dx. So we can write this whole as, let's write it, don't change it, let's keep it same. And now this is this term is from a to a plus dA by dt delta t, and also it is a multiplication with delta t. So it's an integration of a function in a small value and multiplication with a very small value. So we can just neglect this term, and similarly we can neglect this term. So we are left with this term b plus dB by dt delta t f dt here it is dx, and now here if we observe this part, we could write the let's write it similarly dou f by dou t dx, and this term can be written as f of a comma t dA by dt into delta t by delta t, and similarly this term can be written as f of b comma t plus dB by dt delta t by delta t plus. Here it is plus and here it is plus. So how can we write this whole term as like this? If you observe, this integration is in a small limit from a to a plus dA by dt delta t. So let's assume that f is constant in this area, and that's and value of f is f a comma t. So and we are integrating it in limit a to a plus dA by dt, and so we can directly write dA by dt here into delta t and the other term delta t, and similarly we can write this third term here delta t and delta t gets cancelled. So finally we got the formal statement of Leibniz integration rule, that is dx minus f of a comma t into dA by dt plus f of b comma t into dp by dt. This is equal to integral of d by dt of integral of a to b f of x comma t dt.